jump in and say welcome to everyone today to our newest installment in the Pursuing Your Mission series. A couple of just quick housekeeping pieces. We'll be recording this, be able to share it out, and make resources available so that you can reference back to this, as you go forward in pursuing your mission. We're really excited for today's topic, and our speaker comes with a ton of experience in maximizing donor strategies. And I know that we have a whole range of folks in the audience, from people who are running smaller nonprofits to folks who serve in board positions, volunteer positions, and medium and larger nonprofits. And we're hopeful that, given the current, increasingly difficult situation that we're seeing nationally as it relates to nonprofits, and that some of the insights here will help you continue to advance your mission despite some of those setbacks that we might be seeing in the sector as well as individually. So as folks will see who are just joining us right now, if you want to take a second to introduce yourself in the chat, sharing your name and where you're from, and anything else about the type of nonprofit work that you are doing or associated with, or social impact work, we're happy to kind of learn a little bit more about one another. But without further ado, I'd love to just turn it over to our esteemed guest to take it away.
Well, good. Well, thanks, Kristin. And appreciate, I guess, first off, I'm Hedrick Belin, and I'm talking to you from greater DC metro area. But first, I want to thank all of you for joining, because now, really more than ever, nonprofits and nonprofit community writ large are being asked to sort of step up and fill gaps that are suddenly showing, and or just be resilient in the face of a lot of challenges. So the plan, real quick, is I'll talk for about 20 minutes and then leave a bunch of the time for questions or discussion. I certainly don't have the corner on fundraising wisdom. I also don't have any magic words or potions that you can use either. And so I'll also note, I'm going to walk through about 10 slides. It's deliberately pretty top level. And what you can build in your community or for your nonprofit is going to depend a lot on what, quote unquote, raw materials you have. And I grew up in rural northeastern Pennsylvania, and my parents, who still live there, want me to move back to northeastern Pennsylvania and build exactly what I've built in Washington, D.C. With the Potomac Conservancy. And I got to admit, if I were to move back to where they live, I don't know what I would build, but it wouldn't be Potomac Conservancy, because I don't have the same, they're not the same raw materials up there. I'd build something else. Again, Washington, D.C., a lot different than Waverly, Pennsylvania. So, again, broad guidance and strategies that then have to be customized, and some will work, some may not be appropriate for your particular nonprofit or situation. So, tonight we're focused on individual donors. Next slide, please, Kristin. And why? Because when it comes to philanthropy, when it comes to charitable donations, if you include planned gifts that people leaving you a nonprofit in their will or trust or estate, almost 80% or more, depending on the year, of charitable giving comes from individuals. And so, as my dad would say in northeastern Pennsylvania, you want to fish where the fish are. Don't be wasting your time on where they're not. Obviously, individual donors, often it's unrestricted or general operating support, so you have more flexibility, whether it is building a reserve or shifting programmatic mix based on situations beyond your control. And at the end of the day, also, unlike institutional giving, like corporate, foundation, and whatnot, long-term relationship building. And really, that's when you think about individual donors, that's what you want to build. Long-term sustainable relationships that ultimately are going to be providing you with reliable, recurring revenue every year. It's not quite as easy as an annuity, but I saw someone in wealth management, but you can do a lot of great stuff. So, one next slide, please. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to individual donor fundraising, this proverb here. Um, the good news is if you've been doing individual giving fundraising for decades, awesome. And if you haven't, guess what? Perfect time to start. So you're right where you should be, even if you feel like you're behind right now. So the timing is perfect. And there are really four broad pieces of building relationships with individual donors. And next slide. The first one is identification and trying to figure out who are potential donors. And you've got limited time. And so being smart about that, where and how you spend your time and effort. I think sometimes people forget those start with those who are already giving. If you're in the private sector or come from the private sector, when you think about new business development in the private sector, the and marketing, the best client, the best contract to market to is a current client or a current contract. Get them to renew, get them to expand the scope of services you're providing. And the same thing with individual donors. The other, and we're going to share these slides, so I'm not going to read them all. But you want to, as it says here, look at your donor base. And then ultimately, you've also got to expand the universe beyond that. But under sequential fundraising, always start with what the people that have already raised their hand and taken the action and say, I believe in your mission. I believe in what you're doing. I believe in the impact you're having. I believe in the difference you're making in the community. And that's why I give. At the same time, you need to be able to meet new people and constantly refreshing. I have people in the DC metro area that move to San Francisco or Portland, Oregon. They're not going to give to us anymore. And we'll come back to this in a little bit, but who else in your broader network, whether it's board members, existing donors, can help you meet and new folks? And at the end of the day, back to it's both identification and qualification. What's their capacity? Because at the end of the day, your social purpose, but as I said a minute ago, focusing your limited time on the highest priorities. So the second big bucket, next slide, is once you've figured out who you want to engage or reach out to, you need to cultivate them first. I'm pretty sure none of you, when you showed up at Yale and walked through Phelps Gate or wherever, they didn't immediately hit you with a solicitation. Now, when you left Yale, they may have hit you with a solicitation, but they wanted you to have a meaningful engagement, in that case, with the university. So give them a chance to meet the organization, to see you in action, give them a chance to experience something you do. Because cultivation is about building and nurturing relationships with potential donors. And it's connecting the prospect in a meaningful way to your mission. And you'll see in some later slides, I mean, given what we do, we don't, take someone and tour them in the museum or the hospital wing or show them impacts in a classroom. We take them outside because that's what they're supporting. And but connecting in a meaningful way. So next slide, a little bit more about this. And when you're connecting with them, you want to give them meaningful information, enriching opportunities. You want to be pretty consistent with the outreach and engagement, so you're staying top of mind. But at the end of the day, it's like any relationship. You need to get to know the other person or the other, and what are they interested in, and what do they value, and how do they see the world. And all sorts of different ways you can do that through visits and conversations and engaging other people that are already, if you're a staff member, getting a program person to join you or a board member to join you to talk about from the board member's perspective or a donor's perspective, why did they support your nonprofit? The third step, which I don't have a slide on, is solicitation. It's one of four. And obviously, that's the formal request for a donation. And you want to find people where you're matching their interest with a program you have, showing that you've paid attention to what excites them about what you do and how it matches up or fits into what their view on philanthropy or what their philanthropic priorities are, which you will have learned if you did the cultivation phase correctly. You got to know them and know that they love going to movies, they don't like to read books, whatever. And so, understanding how they see the world. Um, and put a finer point on it. If you're not asking, you're not fundraising. Now, it doesn't mean you're asking every minute of every day of every week, but it needs to be pretty systematic. Um, and and then, but part of the asking, next slide, is around the messaging. Um, And there was someone asked a question and somewhere about connecting across all political spectrums, or I saw something, values-based messaging. What does your nonprofit stand for? Believe it or not everyone in the world believes the environment is of a philanthropic interest or that the arts are a philanthropic interest. So you want to meet people who have an interest in your mission and how you approach it. I have plenty of examples in rural Virginia where we will have a landowner that we do work with big Trump flags flying at his house. And when the board member pulls up in a Tesla, I kid you not, they both get along. And this is not like just to be cute or illustrative. And because they have a shared value around the importance of healthy rivers and streams. They probably don't agree on much else, but by the way, I don't spend too much time on much else. But that values-based messaging, as I've talked about earlier, as you get to know people, you want to sort of talk to them about what they're interested in. For those of you who remember, at Yale, the course offerings were vast and extensive. And at the end of the day, you, within some limits, picked what you were interested in or what piqued your curiosity, which meant you also said no to a whole bunch of stuff. Fundraising is a lot of heart. People can say, "Oh, I make it's a rational decision," but it's really pretty an emotional decision, and they want to invest in people, and sort of statistics matter, but at the end of the day, so they want to know how you made them feel. They want to know, they want to see themselves in stories. Oh, I see someone that's sort of like me. I could be helpful. People want to be the hero in the story, right? Let them be the hero because of your support. I think, yeah, you made this possible, and give them the opportunity, and that's really what they're looking for. In our case, as a river conservation organization, they really want to see stronger policies and cleanups, but they don't have time for whatever, and they want to effectuate that in the community through your nonprofit. Um, so those compelling messages are definitely important. Um, the final thing, good news, you use values-based messaging that matched up with what they are interested in, and they made the gift. Hey, guess what? There's still one more step to do. Next slide. And that's stewarding them is what it's called. And it's very similar to cultivation, only, again, giving them opportunities to maintain and grow the relationship. They've now moved from a prospect to a donor. They've increased their literal and figurative investment in this relationship. And so, obviously you want to express gratitude for the gift, share updates on how their gift is making an impact or being used, and continue to engage them. Give them opportunities to volunteer. Give them opportunities to advocate with an elected, give them an opportunity to learn something. Give them an opportunity, frankly, to spend time with other like-minded people, and they're like-minded because you've recruited people with shared values, and they can get a chance to spend time with people that believe in your mission, and that will further inspire them. Um, next slide. And you want to do, obviously, a gift comes in the door. A prompt thank you. That could be a quick email, it could be a text, it could be yes, you have to send a formal letter at some point acknowledging it. But really, at least at Potomac Conservancy, we try to have six non-ask interactions for every time we ask. And, multiple people, you can never say thank you too much, by the way. So, maybe a board member agrees to make a phone call or write a note a month after the gift is made. That's still great. They're going to be like, wow, they really care about me. As I said, follow up with updates. The most important gift, I leave this at the bottom, uh, is actually the second gift, not the first gift. It's the second gift. The first gift could be just a one-off. I did it for my friend. Whatever. But to see that they're really sort of have bonded or taken to your mission, it's that second donation that they make. Much higher likelihood that they're going to stay with you. And again, we're trying to build long-term sustainable relationships. In the case of Yale, I'm pretty sure they're looking at a 40-year time horizon or more, actually much more than 40-year time horizon. If they can build on that relationship during your 4 years or however, I realize not everyone's an undergrad on the call, on the Zoom, I mean, but it's that demonstrated attachment and building the relationship. Um, you got to be smart about it. I talked about at the top, what are the raw materials? So next slide, everyone has a role to play in the organization. You want to build this sense of team. And by the way, not everyone is the asker. And in fact, sometimes the asker is lacking some other critical skills that you need, like the programmatic expertise that they can go, who's the person who can go in depth about the program because they're leading it. I mentioned earlier, board members, there are different ways. They can be an introducer. They can be a sort of a co-pilot with whoever's going to ask. They can be a thanker. There are all sorts of different ways. But at the end of the day, also, if you've got a values-based organization, like what does the donorship stewardship look like? How are you being consistent with keeping people inside the organization, getting special treatment because you value the relationship? It's not transactional. It's got to be authentic. People, you're all smart enough. You'll sense if it's inauthentic. But most of you again, to come full circle, I mean, you're giving of your time. Some of you are probably paid staff, maybe, but because you believe in the mission, and so that in and of itself, they can't fake that. Either you do or don't believe that the Potomac River is important. And if you're in San Francisco, absolutely not a problem. You probably don't because you're not connected to it. And there are lots of universities and colleges in the world educating the future leaders. But odds are, if you give to a university, it's probably the one you went to because you're connected to it. Which brings me to my final point, and then we'll sort of wrap it up. You don't build it overnight. It's very systematic, and you just take what is achievable, what is doable. Don't pilot stuff, test stuff, because you're trying to build a relationship. So you got to have time with people. The systems in how you keep track of information. There are a lot of sophisticated constituent relationship management or CRM systems out there, and certainly financial systems and things like that. I don't know about other sectors in the nonprofit space, but the environmental community sucks at celebrating success. We're always, what's next, or we're not satisfied. Like someone gives a gift, that's awesome. What a great testament to the work that you and or your predecessors on the board or on the staff have done, because this person felt it was worth their money to invest in you. It's a signal that they really believe in what you're doing. So I guess my closing comment is you need to think about Major League Baseball when it comes to individual donor fundraising and not Yale University. Why do I say baseball? In Major League Baseball, your goal is to get a hit when you get up to the plate. And if you get a hit 1 out of 3 times, you're considered a success in baseball, which means you failed 2 out of 3 times to achieve your goal, or 66%, 67% of the time. And so, all of us overachieving type A personalities, that want 110% on the test, or on the paper. Uh, Not when individual donor fundraising. Again, playing the odds, you're going to make asks and someone's going to say no. I guarantee you, and you got to be comfortable with it. That doesn't mean no forever. It just means so setting expectations about what's realistic and fair, and you will not get yes every single time. By the way, if you do, you're clearly not asking often enough or enough new people. I mean, you could certainly stack it so you got it 100% of the time and proved me wrong and you were an outlier. But then you're not really being aggressive enough. So, again, I find it really inspiring and powerful. It does, we've been able to, basically grow the dollars going. When I got at Potomac Conservancy, we probably brought in $300,000 from individual donors on $1 million budget. So it's just under a third of our money. And now on a 2.9, almost $3 million budget, 70% of it comes from individual donors. So both the percentage and obviously, therefore, the total dollars has grown dramatically over the last, it's probably 10 years now. But if someone said, what's your trick? There's no magic money tree, as I said earlier. There's no sort of secret words that if you say them, you'll get the gift. There also are no secret words. If you say them, you'll lose the gift. It's just good, inspiring things, and then the discipline. How are you changing lives, saving lives, making a difference in the world? And how are you every day, every week staying focused on this? So I'm sure some of this was helpful. I'm sure some of it wasn't, but happy, Kristin, I guess to take questions. I don't know how you guys moderate this, and you may have some thoughts from your experience too, or if someone else wants to share experience. Again, I do not have the corner on wisdom.
Yeah. Well, thank you. First of all, before we jump into questions, which I'm happy to moderate for us, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing that great overview of sort of what we're looking at here as a community, and based upon your expertise and the experience, and congratulations on that sort of like aspirational growth, not only in your budget, but really moving that sort of 30% to 70%, which I can only imagine is it enables you to pursue your mission at an even larger level. So everyone can join me in giving a proverbial round of applause. And I saw that we had some questions. So there's a couple ways to ask questions. You can either put something in chat, actually raise your physical hand, or use the hand raise function, and then I can facilitate for us. And I saw Jem Seymour. I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off. Hedrick, thank you very much for your time and your insight. I have really, I guess, two questions. One is on your last slide, you invest in systems. Well, very often a young nonprofit doesn't have money to invest in systems. And what hints do you have to ask donors to invest in capacity building that doesn't directly further the mission? That's one question. The other is, what hints do you have for research on potential donor base? What platforms might you recommend? And thirdly, not a question, but we have a similar Northeast Pennsylvania roots. I'm probably further north than you, up in Halstead, Great Bend. And of course, shale oil is a big issue up there. So maybe sometime you'll go back and do something about the Conservancy up there.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. No, Pennsylvania has a proud tradition of extractive timber, coal, oil, natural gas. So, it's interesting. So your question on the capacity building and systems, I think, again, sometimes people are like, well, we're not building a science wing. We're not, expanding the warehouse to provide services or something. But I found donors that know you well, if you lay out the case, hey, I'm totally making this up to be illustrative. We've been keeping track of our donors in Excel. We're so proud we moved from index cards. But in order to spend more time in front of donors building relationships, we need $5,000, $10,000 investment, whatever it might be, to get a very basic constituent relationship management CRM system. It doesn't have to be Salesforce with all the whistles and bells necessarily. But I do think, back to given limited time and resources, including limited staff time, like, let's make sure we're deploying that as best we can and being able to upgrade the technology. I mean, you do need computers. You do need a phone. You do need this and that. So, and then on the donor, the research, there's sort of two ways for identification and qualification. One low cost way is to get people around the table and run names by them in a group setting so people can play off of each other. How much and giving them ranges that they can get that they might be able to give. Then there are certainly services like Wealth Engine and others where you can pay a certain amount and run a certain number of names through and get a sense. But you got to be even that tool. You got to be careful because sometimes, like if they live in uh, Jackson Hole and they have a house, their net worth is going to be a lot higher than if they live in Cody, Wyoming, just because of so. Like any tool, it's useful, but you shouldn't be constrained by it or take it as absolute. So hopefully that answered your question. But I found we've definitely made cases of upgrading our finance system as we've grown. Like we don't need a physical structure, but we need the virtual infrastructure on the finance side. And those donors that are closest to you, obviously, you're not going to lead with that for a first-time gift from most people, unless in building the relationship, they say, I only want to invest in, systems in organizations. And I see my money as venture capital and I want to be a first in donor that's going to unlock. Then you go, hey, well, I got the perfect thing for you.
Tell me who they are.
Yeah, well, that comes with talking with them, right? And or if they're a longtime donor, that you can probably make the case for to go to the next level as the organization. One of the key things that will unlock it for us and demonstrate why having more robust CRM system.
Thank you, Jem. One of the things that I wanted to ask, and happy to hear other folks' questions as well, is one of the points that you made in the presentation was about the most important gift being the second gift, because that really sort of indicates that there is the beginning of a kind of substantial relationship that could come versus just a one-off. And I was wondering if you could just expand upon, how quickly can we go for that second gift from the first gift, and different strategies from moving somebody who has indicated initial interest to a sort of second donor. So yeah, those pieces.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's never a perfect answer, right? And it's going to vary by donor. We tend to give folks sort of quote unquote two opportunities a year to give. One is year end, so the November, December timeframe. And so if someone were to make a gift now in May, we would definitely be asking for a year end gift just to see, because that's often when people focus. But then as you get to know them better, or as they give more money, they're definitely people that I actually don't ask in December because I've asked them for a much bigger gift that they made in June, right? So I just give them an update instead. But you don't ever make the decision for them. Give them the opportunity to come to the event. Even if they say, I don't really like events, because you give them the opportunity, and even if they don't come, they'll be like, "Wow, they're doing this really cool event," and like I'm so impressed. I hate events. I'm antisocial, but I still like what the organization's doing. It's a great communications touch point. You want them to hear from you on a fairly regular basis. Now that doesn't have to be paper, obviously. When it can be through social media, it can be emails. Again, all those take time, but you need to quote unquote stay in front of them throughout the year. Yeah, and I don't think there's a magic formula. We sort of have seasons and ebbs and flows about more cultivation, and there's a spring event. Summer around here gets a little quiet, and then a year-end push for a November, December ask is sort of how we do it. Monthly, another thing that at a base level, I think more and more people are trying to do is monthly giving. Where you automatically give. If you ask someone for $600, they may go, huh. If you say, can you give me $50 a month? They might be like, heck yes. And you're like, that's the same answer, by the way, on an annual basis. But if other people have ideas too, again, if someone, I'm just looking at someone put a longer question in. Oh, it's some advice from Stephanie Jones.
I also want to point out the great comment from Lowell in chat. Capacity building actually does further the mission. Programs don't magically run themselves. People make it happen. Worthy of mention.
And one additional point on that, right? Like when it comes to clean water, trees in the ground, great stuff. Everyone wants to plant trees, right? Actually, it's not the planting of the trees. You want trees that survive. If it was just planting of trees, like, do you care whether the root ball's in the ground or up in the air? It's planted. I achieved, and obviously you don't. And getting them to understand, just in a similar way, like it's not just buying the trees and just planting the trees. Okay, there's some maintenance involved and there's staff involved. And even if it's a volunteer tree planting and really making sure you honor the true work and explaining here's what all is involved to achieve this. Nonprofit community is famous for sort of selling itself short in terms of what truly is involved in delivering the service, implementing the mission, providing the deliverable, whatever it might be. And so make sure you're fully thinking about, what are the true costs. And by the way, it includes like, yeah, you need a computer because you got to send out an email to invite the volunteers. How else are they going to show up? And again, I'm being a little provocative here, but that's part of it, right? Of a tree planting. So,
Yeah, on that note, I'm right now with the nonprofit that I run outside of Yana. I have a team of volunteers who are helping us do a direct mail piece to a subset of our donor list. And it's been a really enlightening experience for me to work with them on this direct mail piece. I've done the work we've centrally done the work to, get addresses on labels and, get all the printed material and the stamps. And they're basically having a stuffing party, together. And some of the feedback that I've gotten is that this has been like a great community building opportunity for folks to come together, talk about why they're interested in the organization. But then also it's been a great opportunity for those volunteers, some of whom are donors, to kind of understand like, wow, it actually to be able to get our information out costs money. And that, to send 500 pieces of mail is, the stamps and then, their volunteer time plus the coordination. And so I've learned that, some of our kind of top folks who can kind of see a little bit behind the curtain has actually been like a really positive experience to kind of having a deeper appreciation for just what it takes to run, especially a small nonprofit.
and again, honoring your work, and there's a question here that we can maybe go to next from Richard Sutto, but no one really wants to pay for your audit. No one really wants to pay for your electric bill. If you're doing real estate conservation land transaction, no one wants to pay for the FedEx or the interest or, but don't like that's not what you lead with. But those are necessary, right? I want to make sure you're well run and fiscally responsible. Well, that's why we have to do an audit. And that, there's not the magic audit fairy who just does it. It costs. And so there are ways to talk about it, though, where it's all part of supporting, but you don't lead with it. But the whole project to do thus and such, to do protect 1,000 acres of land in the headwaters to ensure it's not developed. Here's the total amount. And I guarantee you there's some stuff in there that no one really wants to pay for, but you can't do it without it. So there's a question, can you comment between endowment sort of gives and one-time or recurring? So, I think for smaller nonprofits, getting that recurring annual you've been giving for a while is the most important, in my view. Longer term health, certainly, if there's someone that, through a planned gift were to die and leave a lot of money, maybe put that in an endowment. maybe if there's an institution but the thing to keep in mind about endowments is in order to pump off money, they've got to be enormous because you're depending on it, you're going to be taking 4, maybe 5% of total value. And so to get, $100,000 even, you need a lot of money. There's some other in between steps to take. And a lot of people, sophisticated, the other piece to keep in mind on endowments, and yeah, we're reading about Harvard's endowment. Guess what? If you've been reading carefully, the 50 whatever billion dollars, a lot of it's restricted. And so they can't put it to necessarily someone left it for the anthropology department or for the sports team or whatever. It's got donor restrictions on that particular endowment. You could go back to the donor or the heirs of the donor and say, hey, we actually need to, we'd like you to free it up and let us use it on like defense of liberal arts education or something. But so, that's the other piece I would note. Oftentimes it comes with restrictions that, can be helpful. But there can also limit your flexibility to move and adapt based on what the situation is dictating. Again, given limited resources, how do you best deploy them to have the greatest impact, the greatest mission impact? And if you've got unrestricted sort of go do whatever you want with them dollars, you can pivot when something comes, either a great opportunity that you didn't see or a terrible challenge that anyone have COVID on their bingo card? I doubt it, in terms of like, oh, let's plan for that. So anyways.
Lisa, I see your hand up.
So we had a little debate about.
Sorry, I was trying to get off of mute. Sorry about that. I was just going to follow up on something else you said, Hedrick, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. I I don't think we can underestimate stewardship, right? And I will just say, taking ownership of I've been in situations where we got a really generous gift and we didn't get organized about stewardship. And so to your point about the second gift is the most important, we can't go back for a second gift because the stewardship was not what it should have been. And so I just wanted to kind of emphasize that point.
No, that's great. And it is, I believe it's about relationships. And, think about relationships you have elsewhere in your life, business relationships, family relationships, friend relationships. If for whatever reason you only see someone once a year during the year-end holidays, and you miss it 1 or 2 years, that relationship could wither on the vine, right? Just from sort of neglect. And maybe you wanted to, I don't know, but and at the end of the day, people actually give to people, and they're going to give to people they trust, people they respect, people they believe in. That's why it's sort of, increasingly the good news is we're seeing more where people are like, I believe in you and your team. Here's my money. You go figure out the best use for it. Rather than, I want to specifically support this opaque, very narrow piece. I think the other 2 points I'll make, and then I know there's some more questions in here. The number one reason someone doesn't make a gift, they weren't asked.
They weren't asked. Yes.
Now, and so back to the baseball analogy, just get me up to the plate. I'm going to strike out. I'm going to strike out or not get a hit a couple of times. But, if you don't get up to the plate, you definitely can't get a hit. And then, the other thing to keep in mind with all of this too is no money, no mission, or in the case of Yale or Harvard, no students, no school. Right? It's a little different because they have earned, what I would argue is earned income off of tuition. But so.
So we have a question here from David saying, do you have any particular thoughts on how to fundraise when a not-for-profit first achieves its 501c3 status, such as how to use this organizational accomplishment to drive donations? I'm happy to jump in on this, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
This actually just happened to me. Yeah. So, I started a nonprofit in 2020 which had a C4 status, which was easy to get really quickly. And then in 2021, we applied for our C3 status to switch. It actually took 2 years. Sometimes it takes a long time for the IRS to approve it. And we actually got the notice, I think it was like December 29th of the end of that year. And so we sprung into action and leveraged it for our end of the year campaign. And we're able to sort of increase our donations by $5,000. Again, we're a very small nonprofit. We were only anticipating to get $2,000. We got $7,000. And then we also, after that, too, in the beginning of the year, got 2 donor advised fund checks, one for $5,000 and one for $8,000 that had come from sort of follow up that we had done. But it was really sort of one, we didn't know exactly when this was coming in, but we were thinking about this exact thing, that we wanted to message it. We wanted to message it as an accomplishment. And we also wanted to message it as an accomplishment with sort of forward looking, this is now what this is going to allow us to be able to do. And so we had all of that sort of lined up, ready to go, so that whenever we did get that letter, we could pull the trigger. So preparation, I think, is one of the kind of key things if you haven't quite gotten there yet. And then the second thing, too, that we did really quickly was we had mapped out all the different donor advised fund vehicles that were out there, Fidelity, et cetera, to make sure that we were on their radar and that we were set up to take those gifts. And in the instance of Fidelity, you need to have, at least at the time, a person who already had a donor advised fund recommend you to be able to get onto their directory. So I had already had the list and was like kind of going through my network, through these relationships that I'd been building, not the first conversation, but as I got closer relationship with different donors and volunteers, to say, you know what, I'm really looking for somebody who's got a relationship with Fidelity. I know your boss is a banker. Do you know, Tara, do you have any idea if this is the type of thing he has? And luckily it was through one of these conversations that we found a connection who was able to kind of get us on a couple of these DAF radars, that one of them then ended up turning out to be a $5,000 contribution for us. And now we're doing the work to kind of figure out who that donor is, to continue to get them to give long term. So my takeaways are, wherever you can anticipate this, get your things in order to celebrate this as an accomplishment. And it does open up a no pool of funding opportunities, whether that is the donor advised fund world or other sort of smaller community based grants through like your local community foundations, and sort of doing the work to be able to get on their radars could be really sort of a great strategy.
Yeah, and I think again that preparation. I mean, in your story, Kristin, which is great, you had done a lot of the spade work. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my God, we got it. Now what do we do? It was like a lot of the spade work or prepping the field for when the opportunity was there. And certainly in between, I mean, you can look at, there may be a way to work with a local community foundation to be your fiscal sponsor. So if someone does want to make a donation and get the tax deduction, tax law gets interesting right now, depending on what the Congress does with the, but given how they've adjusted some of the itemized and what levels you have to be at, and also donor advised funds, back to like one of my slides about the identification and qualification, including capacity. It gets tough as people start to put big chunks of money in 1 year and then nothing for 4 years to the donor advised fund, which counts as which then gives them tax advantages. But that's tough to ascertain. Like, oh, how much Mr. and Mrs. Smith are now giving through their donor advised fund, and it's tough sometimes to figure out what's really going on as a result in terms of what they're giving away. And let's see what else is on here.
Mary shared, startups need to build to build a board and ask their board for gifts, or to get gifts from people they know. Sharing from her perspective, that's how she started, because a lot of times you don't qualify for grants until you have multiple years of history. And this is exactly my experience as well. I started a nonprofit in the beginning of COVID to support families who had lost loved ones, share their stories to be able to push back on misinformation about the severity of COVID. It wasn't like I started with a 5-year strategic plan or a donor or, sort of 3 or to 5 years worth of 990s. And so the friends and family ask was essential to being able to kind of get us through those first couple of years until we had those track records and systems. And one of the strategies that I deployed and I think, is really useful is just having these, sometimes they're referred to as house parties, but just small gatherings of folks who know you, know your work, know your vision, who are willing to make a couple of asks to folks in their network, come meet you over, a small backyard barbecue or, at a coffee shop in which you can have that face-to-face time to start to cultivate some of those donors. And without deploying sort of a strategic set of those events over our first couple of years, there's no way we would have been able to kind of make it further while we were looking for opportunities for larger gifts. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I think it's, part of the challenge if you're just getting something off the ground, Mary.
Yeah, and again, as I said earlier, donors want to be the hero in the story. Show and a hero by showing them. And again, this is gross simplification. How are you changing lives or saving lives? That is a head kind of thing. And so in Kristin's example, helping save lives based on, it sounds like battling some misinformation about something that's brand spanking new and coming into meaning COVID, and coming into that space. And it's not always easy. And it's not like you say, we're changing lives, but, we're changing the trajectory. We're improving the community. And people want positive. I mean, you can have some doom and gloom and threat, certainly, but more, human nature is, okay, what are you going to do about it? And how are you going to, positive, what's your vision for the future? What's going to be different in terms of how you change lives or save lives, thanks to their investment, in some cases of money, but also, as you described there, Kristin, are people giving of their talent and time beyond just the treasure piece, and connecting you and networking and being a champion and being your eyes and ears. And it's incredibly powerful once it gets going. And people appropriately feel great about it because they have made a difference in their community. They have changed lives. They have saved lives. And also, there's plenty of nonprofit stuff that some of the most successful nonprofits did not have a perfect strategic plan, did not have this, that, or the other thing. You just got it. And by the way, it's never going to be perfect. Spoiler alert, it's never going to, just, you believe in it and people will get caught, and if they're sophisticated and you're getting started, someone mentioned like venture capital or starting a business. If someone's used to seeing what a startup is like and they know certain things, well, of course you're not as mature, whatever that means, as an established business or an established nonprofit. But it's the ideas, and with your little bit of capital, here's how we've leveraged it, and now we need to scale it. I think someone wrote that in here too. I apologize; it's tough to. But there are a lot of parallels to the private sector. Again, nonprofit doesn't mean you don't need to end the year with a positive number, meaning revenue exceeded expenses, because otherwise it's going to be tough to make it over the long run.
We do have time for maybe a couple more questions if there are others from the group. And while folks are kind of thinking around questions, you had just mentioned earlier about the in your presentation about the sort of prompt thank you. And I wanted to also note this sort of, we all give acknowledgement letters at some point. I think the thing that I was really kind of resonated with me was that it could be even a quick note in 24 hours to say, I caught your gift. Thank you so much. Looking forward to, the next time we have the chance to talk, whether that's a text message or an email message or some other sort of form of messaging. And I think that is like a very quick and very easy way in which we can start that stewardship cycle, which can easily fall off everyone's plate. And so I wanted to kind of pull that out as a hot tip, that walking away from this, like, is something that I try to do, and also reinvigorates me to continue that practice.
When you know the person a little bit, like, is it a quick little handwritten note that you got to find a stamp and put it in the mail? You'd be surprised how actually those are still, depending on who you're engaging with, like, they're the outlier now, so they're even more appreciated. Or it could literally, I think you said this, like, here's my phone. Hey, I just saw it came in, and because you're excited, right? Thank you so much, and then you can follow up later and talk about it or whatever. But it's like, hopefully you open it up or get the notice in whatever, that the donor advised funds transferred the money to your account. Like, hopefully you feel good about it. Like, capture that enthusiasm, capture that excitement, capture that appreciation with a quick note. They'll sense it. And that's what people, I mean, people, there's a lot of tough things in the world, no doubt about it. And I mentioned earlier, the environmental community sucks at ever celebrating, but like, people also are looking for joy, especially right now, and they're looking for hope and they're looking for future. And there are lots of great nonprofits doing that right now, every day. And so, give
I
people
am.
give people the opportunity to join you or to increase their time or their donation. And by the way, I ask all the time, and I get turned down or don't get as much. That's fine. But you also, if you don't ask, you'd be surprised. Occasionally, you'll make a bold ask, and someone's like, "Yep," and they say it immediately, like, "Dang, I should have asked for more, maybe." But anyways, it's still exciting, right? You just don't know, and don't make the
You
decision.
don't.
Let them make the decision. That's too big an ask, Hedrick. Oh, sure, happy to do it. Or, gonna need to think about it and get back to you. That's cool too. Oh, any of those are great.
I disappeared off screen for a second because I wanted to bring up this. You had talked about snail mail. I sometimes feel that like I'm single-handedly keeping the post office in in business. And this is just like, stationery that I've gotten that, it's just one card that I pop in the mail to folks. I don't have the schedule that I can do it every single day, but at least once a month, I'm sending out a handful of postcards to folks to say, thanks so much for your gift, or thanks so much for, we just held an event in Seattle, and I'm going to send a thank you. I'd already given a thank you gift to our host, but I want to also send a thank you card for hosting us. And again, that's just another sort of, easy win in your stewardship plan that I'm so glad that you just reinforced and reinvigorated, because some of these things are not rocket science, but they do make a huge difference to get that snail mail.
And again, it doesn't need to be immediately. And Grace, I see your hand up, so we'll go to you in a sec. We know it's working out. I actually get texts back where someone's taken a photo of the board thank you note that they received like 4 months after the gift was made, and they're like, this is fantastic," and it is. But like, so again, it doesn't necessarily need to be immediate. It doesn't necessarily need to be the staff. It could be a volunteer. It could be depending on how you're structured. It could be someone who's benefited from the services that your organization provides. Again, it's got to be authentic. And as I said at the beginning, like, what are the raw materials? And that may be inappropriate, but you just never know. So Grace, what do you've been patiently listening. So what are you thinking? What's your question?
Yeah, thank you so much for having this event. It's been really helpful. I feel like I've been learning a lot. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but I was curious if either of you or anyone else in this meeting has any idea of like opportunities within the Yale community, Yale network, to identify individuals, potential donors, maybe potential volunteers, who might really care about like my organization's cause, or any of our organization's cause, because I'd love to strengthen relationships with other Yaleys, and based in New York, and obviously the Yale Club
Yeah.
in the city is a really great base. I'm not a member myself, but I know that there's events there all the time. So I would love to hear any thoughts from from you, Hedrick, or from anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I was going to actually say, if I didn't before you said where you were. I like, is there a local Yale club? So yes, it's a big one in New York. Um, I think one of the questions is, how do you? And someone put in here that yeah, Yana actually has a meeting, and there's a conference coming up in October. So make sure you put that on your calendar too if you're in Manhattan. Um, I think the chance it's always better if you can get to, so maybe you can. It may be a little late this year, but like if it were appropriate, like could the Yale Club during their volunteer community service days, is there a way that they could plug in that way with you potentially? Or is there or differently, like is there someone in your network who could potentially host something? We heard earlier from Kristin about a house party or a little cocktail reception. Is there something like that? As well. But I think that it's like anything, right? You want to make sure you got a connection. I mean, going into a bar and starting to ask people out is probably a low return strategy. So you want to increase your odds a little bit as well.
Edna.
Kind of follow on Rachel's comment, which is the Yale Club of New York is a great place for you to be the fourth Wednesday of every month when we have a Live from New York Rihanna session, and there are all kinds of people who care about the work that you do and want to help you make it work better.
So I'm wondering whether the change in the tax laws that increase the standard deduction substantially, and so it took away a group of people who might be partially motivated by the tax deduction aspect, and how that has changed in terms of your approach, and whether you have found talking about things like QCDs for retired people as an alternative has become a new option in terms of your giving back your ass basket.
So great set of questions. Going the reverse with the last piece was around IRAs and retirement accounts. Depending on how they're structured, after a certain age, you're required to take distributions, and in some cases, you can make it a charitable gift. So yes, we've seen more of that. Certainly. And part of that is I haven't been there in the organization the whole time, but we've been around for 30 years. So people that were first giving are now surprisingly 30 years older. And so many are, we did not, to your question on the tax deductibility, we didn't see any that we could pick up sort of a decrease in donations, either by in total number of donors or dollar amounts. But they're sort of, I won't go into it here, but there's sort of 7 prototypes of donors. And someone early on noted, some people just want the recognition. There was like they want the name on the science wing or somewhere in the comment. That's a motivation for some people. Some people, it's a tax break. Some people, it's sort of a family obligation. So, but we did not see decline in giving once the charitable gift, once the deductible levels changed. I think I hit on all 3 of your things.
Thank you. I think QCDs, by the way, are just a great vehicle. And if you're an asker, if you're in that position in a charity, you really need, in my personal opinion, to become experienced in it, because it's just a win-win approach for charitable giving, in my experience.
And it's depending on your particulars too. Like I beg, borrow, and steal all sorts of expertise in DC. So, if you're not the expert in sort of estate planning or plan giving or, different non-direct cash vehicles, who is someone in the community that you can get, and they can give that talent to you of like, hey, if you got a sophisticated question, I love getting other people bringing their expertise, legal, PR, fundraising, communications, graphic design. You'd be surprised how many people want to give of their talent in addition to their treasure, so to speak, or make a charitable donation.
Well, on that, noticing the time, we will have to wrap up the conversation for now. Hedrick, this has been incredibly wonderful to have you with us, and also to everyone in the audience, incredibly thoughtful and great questions and engagement. As noted at the top of the call, we'll send out the recording and slide notes. And, I think from sort of a wrap up here, a couple of takeaways. One, you got to do the ask, right? So let us all kind of like remind and be in community with one another about that. Two, got to continue to do the stewardship, thanking folks, doing the work to recognize and ask them to come to things, even if they may not be their cup of tea. And then three, rinse and repeat. So on that note, I want to remind folks a couple of things we mentioned in chat. There's a social impact conference coming up on October 24th of this year. Mark your calendar. We hope to see you in New York on that date. Registration will be coming out in mid-June, so stay tuned to your email for that. And then Rachel also shared in chat a link to our nonprofit mentorship program. So if you are interested in supporting nonprofits with your expertise and sort of pro bono consulting, there's opportunities for you to volunteer as an individual. And then on the other side, if you're a nonprofit looking for support, there is, a way for you to kind of sign up to receive some of this pro bono support. So I recommend checking that all out as well. And I can't end this conversation without noting that YANA is a nonprofit itself. We're independent of Yale. We're all alumni led as well as alumni funded. So if you have been inspired by this conversation, as I have, feel free to chip in a small contribution to help keep the lights on. Hedrick, you have inspired me today. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you all on another YANA offering or somewhere else in the not too distant future. So thanks, everyone.